She is charged with high treason.
It's a female spy. Female spy. Well, that's exciting.
The famous exotic dancer represents beauty and feminine temptation.
Mata Hari is mystery and fantasy.
The courtesan has intimate relationships with powerful figures.
Sex and death together. I think that's what she is.
But one question is still unanswered 100 years later.
Was she a spy? Was she guilty or not?
Will it remain a secret? Paris, February 1917. World War I has been ravaging Europe for 3 years. In the Palais de Justice, one of the most famous women of the era is brought to the investigating magistrate for questioning.
Mata Hari was surprised when she was arrested because she was convinced she could wiggle her way out of any situation. Mata Hari was arrested at a time when one looked for spies absolutely everywhere. One must remember it was 1917. There were hundreds of thousands of deaths every month and no progress. As the French army was not defeated but couldn't manage to win, public opinion was convinced that there were spies within.
But this woman, who was in close contact with men in senior positions,
She wanted to be something, do something. And she wanted to be free as a woman.
At the beginning of the 20th century, Paris offered the opportunity for an independent life. Everything seems possible in the salons and variety theatres with such extravagant delights. This is the path Mata Hari chooses.
She was the Madonna of her days because she was in one moment to the other, she was very famous. Mata Hari was a mix of sex and elegance, and that mix made her so sexy.
Here in Paris, Mata Hari makes a breakthrough as a dancer in 1905. She knows that mystery has great power. She leaves it unclear who she is, where she is from.
All the same, she was a woman who revolutionized her era because she invented the striptease and played on the subconscious, in particular with men. People were fascinated with this phenomenon that appeared cloaked in mystery and finished in a sort of orgasm. It has to be said like it is.
Mata Hari's dancing contains the promise of the exotic, the erotic, and sex. The most influential men of her day surrender to this, quite shamelessly.
She was always incredibly self-conscious about how she was being viewed, how people were looking at her. But she did, I think, what we all desire to do, which is to live out our fantasy, to just do something completely outrageous and to pull it off.
This woman, made famous through her body, appeals to people's fantasies to this very day. But did Mata Hari really commit treason, as her influential lovers claimed when put under pressure? Is she guilty of that charge?
I met Mata Hari when I was extremely young, because my great-grandfather was the prosecutor at her trial.
Mata Hari will spend 6 months in the Palais de Justice, fighting to save her neck. She's interrogated 17 times.
If you believe that the French were really looking for a spy and they believed that she could be that spy, then she had a chance. The most sexy part of her story is indeed the myth To fully understand the myth and the entire story, you really do have to know the girl behind the myth.
Sexy is hardly the word to describe the Dutch province of Friesland, or the small town of Leeuwarden, looking just the way you might imagine. It's in these dreary surroundings that Mata Hari is born on the 7th of August, 1876. And there's nothing at all oriental about her name, Margaretha Geertruida. Her father owns a shop and soon makes quite a fortune on the stock market.
Her father was a pathological liar too. He called himself a baron and made people believe that he was of aristocratic origin. He was someone who always over-exaggerated his importance, who always lived in a never-never land.
Adam Seller loves his daughter.
He spent lavishly on her. He bought her this goat cart, a Bokenwagen, and she had dresses made of silk and velvet in bright colors, which was something that her other friends didn't have. And one of her school friends remembered her as being an orchid amongst a sea of buttercups, which I think is a wonderful kind of symbol. So life began and she was very much adored by her father. And then there were these series of tragedies. So her father loses his money, her mother dies.
16-year-old Margaretha is left with an uncle and aunt.
They sent her to Leiden to become a kindergarten teacher. The story goes that when she got there, she had an affair with the headmaster of the school, a sexual affair. And so she was expelled from school, but he wasn't. He was allowed to remain in office.
The beautiful Margaretha is now 18 years old, without any family or money. Her salvation? Marriage.
Her husband she met because of an advert he placed in the local newspaper. He was an officer who was on leave from the Dutch Indies where he served. She tried to escape, tried to make something of her life. And of course, for her, this marriage would be a very advantageous one because he came from a good family. His mother was a baroness. His uncles were generals, admirals.
In 1895, Margaretha marries John MacLeod.
I remember letters that she said, "Oh, Johnny, Johnny, I'm longing for you." And I don't think it lasted very long, but yes, she was really in love. She was attracted to him, physically attracted also, yes, and he to her.
John is almost 20 years older than Margaretha.
MacLeod did love women, not only his wife, but also other women. So that might have jeopardized the marriage from the beginning a bit.
In 1897, they sailed to the colonies, to the Dutch East Indies. MacLeod has been serving with the Dutch army there for many years. A son, Norman, and a daughter, Non, are both born there.
There is that image of her on the Princess SS Amalia when they're going off to the Dutch East Indies for the first time. And she's wearing a very conventional outfit with a hat. And she looks quite somber. And I wonder whether she didn't really try very hard in the beginning to be a conventional wife and to be a conventional mother to her children.
The Dutch East Indies, today Indonesia, has been a Dutch colony for many decades. MacLeod is appointed commander of the garrison, and Margaretha discovers a new world.
It must have been this extraordinary adventure for her to go off to the Dutch East Indies to observe the dancers, and she became involved in an amateur dramatics society. But the downside of all of that was that they were living in a military garrison, and I think that she was probably also much younger than a lot of the other wives, and her husband was very jealous.
Margaretha is an avid letter writer. It's only recently that letters have emerged which record the agony of her marriage.
One Sunday afternoon, he went completely wild and almost killed me with a bread knife. Our doctor calls it tropical fever. Other people simply describe it as sadism.
Those letters are like a bomb because everybody has now the feeling that there's a pure woman who was having pain, who was struggling for her life and trying to do the best she could.
In 1899, Margaretha's son Norman dies. For a long time it was believed he had been poisoned by natives, but her letters suggest another cause of death. Margaretha describes how her husband infected her with venereal disease. Her daughter is also treated with mercury, at that time a common treatment for syphilis. That would explain the boy's premature death.
His father had syphilis, infected Margaretha, and so as fetus he would have become infected as well. So that is a possibility. It's also possible that the syphilis itself wasn't the cause, but the treatment. It was treated with mercury, which in the end is poisonous.
MacLeod, Johnny, blamed her for Norman's death, and the marriage couldn't survive that. I mean, I think it brought out all of the terrible tensions that were lying underneath.
Margaretha returns to Holland with her daughter Non.
We also know from the letters that Non was ill after that and also had to be treated.
Margaretha fights for the right to keep her daughter, but she has no money. From now on, Non will live with her father. Margaretha will never see her daughter again.
She actually says in the letters that Non and being a mother is what keeps her from sort of sliding into a position of being a courtesan. And once Non has gone, then that opens the door for her.
Margaretha MacLeod dreams of Paris. In 1904, it's the center of the world. "The men find me beautiful," we read in her letters. This will be her major asset in the capital of sophistication.
Very early on, she began with the tactic that she would use all her life: bluff. As she knew she had nothing to lose, she went from one bluff to the next.
Margaretha is determined to leave behind the shackles of marriage, and she's prepared to do almost anything to achieve this. The girl from small-town Holland transforms herself into a lady of the world.
She had no money. She had spent the money earned in Holland with her charms on new outfits and cases that made her look like a wealthy woman. She entered the Café de la Paix and instantly became the center of attention for Parisian society. She was that type of woman.
The high society salons and restaurants appeal to Margaretha. That's where she wants to be, and she will succeed.
I don't think she had the intention of being a dancer. I think that she had the intention of living out some other life.
She must have realized that Orientalism was hot, it was sexy, it was popular. And perhaps she thought, well, I know a thing or two, I saw a thing or two. Let's give it a shot, let's try it.
Nobody from her former life remembers ever having seen her dance, but Margaretha has courage and the good luck to meet the right men, one of whom gives her a new Oriental name.
Matahari means eye of the dawn in Malay, or the rising sun. And I think it's well chosen because the rising sun symbolizes a new beginning, a new day, new adventure. And that is what happened.
What must have made her worth going to see is some sort of incredible joie de vivre, some sort of incredible spirit that she put into her dance. It couldn't have been because of her technical ability, because she didn't seem to have much. So she must have had something.
Margaretha Geertruida from Leeuwarden isn't content with merely adopting the exotic name Matahari. She invents a new art form to go with it: exotic nude dancing.
Beautiful photograph, beautiful headwear.
Her personal album brings to life the magic and all the tricks of this fascinating woman.
There is still one veil beneath, well, so you can't see anything really, but the illusion is that she's naked. And if we go over here, it's rather nice. You can see her in another pose, and the last veil, she's dropping it. So she's almost completely naked.
An exhibition in the Fries Museum of Leeuwarden commemorates the most famous daughter of the town. Matahari's personal albums are here. On these pages, she stuck all the photographs and clippings of her spectacular career.
We have a Dutch newspaper article, English, French. There are some Italian articles in here, Spanish as well, a few German articles, because she danced in Berlin, she performed in Vienna, she danced at the Scala Theatre in Milan. She danced all over the world, really.
Even then, her personal life story is stylized and presented as a myth.
She told journalists different stories about who she was, where she came from. She was a princess born on the island of Java. She had an English father, married a Scottish nobleman, a variety of different stories, but always with elements from her own past that really happened, but just made up into a completely different story or different stories. And I think these stories, well, they helped her, obviously.
There is one letter where she says she thinks people just came to see her take her clothes off. But I don't think that is enough of an explanation, because other women began to take their clothes off on stage as well. I think it must have been something more than just showing off her body. And I think you can see that even from the photographs. I mean, she certainly looks extraordinary. And you do get a sense of this very powerful personality, almost like she's impersonating something on stage.
Paris in the early years of the 20th century becomes her stage. This is the only known film footage of Matahari.
That was paramount for her to be accepted in society, preferably high society, of course, because she would have regained what she lost when the father went bankrupt. She was accepted in Parisian high society and German high society and everywhere in Europe. She went to the horse races, and she lived as a socialite.
Matahari, the girl from a small town, leads the life of a society lady. She's extremely beautiful, corresponding precisely to the standards of the day, and well aware of it.
There are people who are saying because she was abused by her husband, she couldn't have enjoyed having sex with other men. But, well, I think you must enjoy it a bit to do it as many times as she did.
The men throw themselves at Matahari's feet. She allows this, and she enjoys it.
My understanding of a courtesan is that that is someone who strikes their own deal around the selling of sex. So she doesn't have a pimp, and there was only a certain class of woman who would do that. And actually, there was a lot of sex for sale in Paris at the fin de siècle.
Mata Hari permits wealthy men to keep her. They finance her magnificent clothes, fine jewelry, racehorses, and houses.
There were different lovers, but each of them was a member of high society and directly or indirectly very influential.
Paris, the city of love. For Mata Hari, the city of lovers. They include influential government ministers, aristocrats, industrialists, the super rich, French, Spanish, Italian, and German. In Berlin, she meets the Prince of Hanover, the Kaiser's son-in-law, and probably even the German crown prince. Mata Hari meets her admirers quite openly, showing a preference for men in uniform.
She wasn't ashamed of loving men in uniform, and she openly dined one night with one officer, the next evening with completely other officer, and the next evening with someone else entirely.
But time takes its toll. A few more years and Mata Hari will be well over 30. Her infrequent performances now bring in less money. Another reason why friendships with men are increasingly important for the aging courtesan.
She had less success for several reasons. Every fashion goes out of fashion. Also, Mata Hari had set a trend, so others followed her example. There were Isadora Duncan, Maud Allen, and Louis Fuller. Where she had once been alone, now she had many competitors.
It's becoming harder and harder for Mata Hari to maintain her extravagant lifestyle.
Once she became Mata Hari, I think even in her private moments, she was always this creation, this person that she had made herself into. And so I think that when things began to go wrong, it was when she realized that she couldn't pull it off anymore. The performance was wearing thin, people could see through it.
In summer 1914, now aged 38, she travels to Berlin. Finally, she has another show lined up as a dancer. A comeback.
She had actually written her own ballet, which she called Chimera, and it was the story of a priest falling in love with a goddess. I mean, it was very, very Mata Hari. But, you know, she'd written it herself. She'd got this long run at the Metropole Theatre, and this is going to be her big comeback. But unfortunately, of course, the war breaks out, and there's another story.
On the 3rd of August 1914, the German Reich declares war on the Republic of France. World War I is just a few days old. It will develop into a bloodbath the like of which the world has never seen.
At the exact moment the war broke out, she was having dinner with the chief of police, who was also a lover of hers. Interesting small fact, but...
The show is cancelled. Though unpolitical herself, she is trapped between the two sides.
She became a persona non grata in Germany. She was considered a foreigner by the Germans as she had lived 10 years in France. This led to all her money in Germany being frozen. Also, because her show was cancelled and she got on badly with the costume maker, he garnished all her furs to cover the cost of his costumes. So Mata Hari wound up penniless in a hotel.
The only thing left for Mata Hari is to go home. A benefactor in Berlin pays for her journey to The Hague. She will live in Holland for almost a year, working as a fashion and photographic model.
She did have a lover then, and he was keeping her, and he was paying for her flat in The Hague. But I think she was very bored, and I also think that it must have been extremely uncomfortable for her to have to come back to Holland. I mean, she wasn't living with her daughter, she didn't have any contact with her daughter. She didn't really have a life in Holland anymore.
What Mata Hari doesn't know is that she's been under observation for a long time. From London. Her name first appears in the files of the British Secret Service in 1915.
They did know something because they had had a report from one of their agents in Holland about her. They didn't have any evidence, but she was a sort of person of interest. But then again, you have to remember the context of the time. I mean, people were picked up for collecting seaside postcards.
After all, Mata Hari was in Germany when war broke out. So is she working for the Germans? The countries that are at war see spies everywhere. Women in particular come under suspicion.
There's this idea of the female spy, you know, the lady in the hat, sitting on a train, you know, sort of taking notes as people talk.
Wouldn't this Mata Hari, who knows everybody, everywhere, be eminently suited for espionage? The British don't have any proof, but in the nervous atmosphere of the war years, suspicion alone is enough.
There's lots of reports of people leaving candles in a particular pattern in their window, or someone seen setting a bird off with a bit of paper on its leg. I mean, all of these kinds of things. Or women, certainly in France, in northern France, women laying out their laundry in particular patterns. And so I think all of that was a kind of manifestation of this anxiety about sort of, you know, the enemy within at that time.
Mata Hari knows nothing of all this. She just wants to get away from Holland.
She longed for Paris, she missed Paris. When you live in The Hague and you know how it is in Paris, well, you don't hesitate, you go back to Paris.
In June 1916, after a long and arduous journey, she arrives back in Paris.
Mata Hari didn't understand that things had changed between the Belle Époque, where everything was permitted and where women were queens, and the First World War, where male morals regained importance and where one should always tell the truth.
During these years, millions die on the battlefields of Europe. To this day, the First World War is considered one of the biggest catastrophes of the 20th century. Paris is a mere shadow of its former self. The sophisticated mood of the pre-war era is passé. Mata Hari returns to a different, alien city, marked by war and death.
In spite of the rose-tinted glasses she permanently wore, she was obliged to notice that things were not quite like before. She saw that Paris was undoubtedly less fun than before, if only because the young, handsome officers she used to meet before were either fighting in the trenches or dead.
The Château Vincennes is located on the outskirts of Paris to the southeast. The confidential files of the French state are kept in this military archive.
I was lucky to get the authorization to work on Mata Hari's file. That's how I got my hands on a file that is about 1,000 pages long. And I must say that the file is absolutely exciting and moving.
Most of them are not released to the public for 100 years. Interrogations, surveillance records, photographs, Mata Hari's personal letters.
If, for example, we take the calling cards that Mata Hari had in her hotel room, where she was arrested by Commissioner Priolet, we can immediately understand why the archives remained relatively secret. We have Colonel Danvigné, a superior officer stationed in Madrid, who was one of her lovers, and in any event, one of those responsible for her fall. We have the even more important Mr. Messémy, who was Minister for War. In 1920, after the war, one cannot imagine Mr. Messimi's calling card being revealed to the public, even though it was common knowledge that he was her lover. And then, for example, this very rare calling card belonging to Vadim de Maslov.
Vadim Maslov, a young Russian officer in the Tsar's army. It's unclear exactly when Mata Hari met him for the first time. He is Mata Hari's last great love.
By the time she meets Vadim de Maslov, she does want to give up the kind of life that she's been leading. It's not a great life, really, because she's very peripatetic. She never knows where her money's going to come from. She knows that her career on stage is pretty much over. She doesn't have any kind of home. And so I think that she probably wants to settle down.
For years, she's been wandering restlessly around Europe, without any real home, without a family. Then comes the great love, which will later inspire scriptwriters.
She was smitten very, very by it. And he could have been her son, because he was so young. I think she just was in love, and it never happened before. So it was a new feeling for her. Since Dear Johnny, she hadn't been in love.
Rumours also circulate about her in Paris. The British Secret Service has informed the French that Mata Hari may be a German spy. At that time, French counter-espionage is headed by Georges Ledoux.
Ledoux was interested in Mata Hari. He had her followed, thinking that she would make contact with other German spies, but in fact she didn't.
In the late summer of 1916, Ledoux and Mata Hari meet in the Ministry of War. She's planning a trip to Western France. Permission is required for areas near the front. Ledoux asks about her time in Germany. Mata Hari senses money in the air. It will prove to be a fatal encounter.
She suggested that she could work for the French. In return, she asked for about 1 million francs, which is an incredibly large sum of money. It's insane. But yeah, she offered, I can spy, I can work for you, I can help you to obtain some information.
Ledoux accepts this offer. Exactly why is not clear. But for several months now, France has been on the brink of defeat and is desperate for success, while the dancer needs money for her lover.
Mata Hari's plan was to marry Vadim de Maslov. Her espionage plans were a little more complex. She first offered Ledoux to go to occupied Belgium to steal the movements of the German armies. Her scoop here was that she was to once again meet the Duke of Cumberland, who was in fact the Prince of Hanover and the cousin of the German Emperor, and convince him to break away from the German alliance to join the English, thus provoking civil war in Germany. This meant that Mata Hari was in absolute dreamland, and that her love led her to believe that anything was possible.
Margaretha Geertruida MacLeod, alias Mata Hari, has found a new role.
She was playing a spy, like she was playing a dancer, she was playing a courtesan. It was playing all her life. Yes, I think she enjoyed playing so much.
The would-be spy embarks on her adventure.
She invented herself anew every time. That worked wonders with the press. It was much more serious later when she was in the spy network. If you tell police or customs officers that you're one thing and then another, then they will either think that you're mad or a spy and then arrest you immediately.
Mata Hari plans to reach Belgium by ship via Spain and Portugal. But she doesn't get further than Great Britain. In November 1916, she's arrested in the port of Falmouth. It's a mistake. She's believed to be a different German spy, Clara Benedicts. The name Margaretha Geertruida is entirely unknown to the British. But they soon realize who they're dealing with, Mata Hari. She travels like a society lady, as noted in great detail by the British Secret Service.
She's traveling around Europe, there's a war on, and she has these 10 trunks of luggage. And there were all these items that were listed, you know, everything from her riding boots to her cigarettes to her costumes.
In London, nobody is sure how to treat this curious traveller. Is Mata Hari a German spy? What is she planning?
She was sent to Scotland Yard in London. She should have remained discreet, but Mata Hari told them she was in fact a French spy hired by Ledoux.
The British inform Ledoux. Ledoux writes back that he has long had suspicions about her and only recruited her as a ploy.
Ledoux, distraught, realized that he'd stepped on a mine with Mata Hari, who in fact could be a German spy. Ledoux was a scoundrel. He committed her without wanting to commit himself and without wanting to pay her.
Mata Hari is sent back, via Portugal again, and Spain to Paris. She arrives there in early 1917 and once again is placed under round-the-clock surveillance.
You have the two inspectors who are following her around Paris, and they describe very poignantly one night when she's sitting alone in the hotel restaurant and she's crying. And I think that the fact that she's doing that openly suggests that she knew that things were very, very serious, and she hadn't heard from Vadim. So it's almost like all of these things are piling up.
As dawn breaks on the 13th of February 1917, the police come to her hotel room. Mata Hari is arrested and taken straight to the examining magistrate, Pierre Bouchardon. She's accused of spying for Germany, of betraying state secrets.
She came in and said, "Listen, I'm an agent for the French Secret Services. Your information is wrong, so let's stop everything here." And my great-grandfather said, "No, sit back down," and then had her arrested. So she fell from a great height and showed great naivety when arriving in prison, where the first thing she said was that she wanted a telephone and a bath. She wasn't able to recover her toiletries or clothes at all for 6 months, which meant that Mata Hari was not able to change her underclothes.
Did Mata Hari reveal to the Germans what her lovers told her in moments of weakness? And what's the story with Vadim Maslov, who, when interrogated, will deny that they planned to marry?
She knows that the trap has been set for her. The walls are sort of closing in. Bouchardon and Ledoux didn't have enough evidence against her. So what was going on in those interrogations is that they are pushing her psychologically because they want her to crack.
Mata Hari attempts to contact her influential lovers. In vain. She writes countless letters. To her accuser, Bouchardon, as well.
Mon capitaine, you have injured me spiritually and physically. I beg you to stop. If my request for clarification of the situation is the reason for this waiting, if that would offend the vanity of Captain Ledoux, then ask him to set me free. I shall never tell anybody what has happened to me here in Paris.
On the battlefields, French soldiers are dying. The war could end badly for France. Are Ledoux and Bouchardon simply looking for a scapegoat? She's interrogated a total of 17 times. Again and again, she denies everything. But Bouchardon has concrete evidence. French counterintelligence has intercepted telegrams to Mata Hari, sent by the German military attaché in Madrid.
Ce cablogramme permet d'être sûr que Mata Hari...
This telegram conclusively shows that Mata Hari, alias H21, was a German spy. Why? Because contrary to all the rules of espionage, the telegram enables her to be clearly identified. There are the lists of the sums that she received from Germany, the banks where she collected this money, even the name and forename of her servants, the faithful Anna Lütjens. In short, upon reading this, as Bouchardon read with joy, one is sure of one thing. H21 equals Mata Hari equals German spy.
On est sûr d'une chose, H21 égale Mata Hari égale agent allemand.
But is this conclusive evidence that she was spying on France? Let's take a look at her last long journey. At the end of 1916, the British sent Mata Hari back to France via Portugal and Spain. She stops off in Madrid, and she remains there for several weeks. And among the people she meets is the German military attaché.
According to what she said during the interrogations with Captain Bouchardon, is she wanted to continue her mission. And she said, if I can't do it in my original mission, then I'll do it here in Madrid. So what she did is she got in contact with the German military attaché, Major Kaller, and she tried to obtain some information. Well, that is what she said she did.
Even in Madrid, Mata Hari only does what she's been doing for a long time. She meets men. This is indicated by the files of the British Secret Service, which is also watching her there. Several meetings with Major Kaller are recorded.
She tried to obtain information from Kaller to report it to Ladoux. But Mata Hari was totally naive, and when staying at the Ritz, wrote all of this to Ladoux and asked what else he needed. What she didn't know was that the whole Ritz staff, in particular the postal staff, were German secret agents. Which meant that Kaller, as soon as Mata Hari gave in her letter at the desk at the Ritz, even before Ladoux received the letter, immediately learned that Mata Hari was in fact a French agent making a fool of herself, and Kaller would get his revenge.
Under interrogation, Mata Hari insists she only wanted to extract information from the German military attaché Kaller for the French. But the question remains, are these telegrams revenge on the part of the Germans? Or were the telegrams forged by the French?
These telegrams were sent in a code that the Germans knew the French had already cracked. So they knew they could decipher the contents. The problem with these telegrams is that we don't know if any original telegrams still exist. We only have the French translations. So perhaps it almost is too beautiful, too good to be true, these telegrams as evidence.
What motive could the French have for forging telegrams from the German military attaché? Is Mata Hari the victim of political intrigue?
My great-grandfather had faith in Ladoux, who was the head of the French Secret Services, who told him that this woman was a spy and should be executed for France's sake. Unfortunately, it was easy to prosecute Mata Hari, as she had committed many errors.
Mistakes like this. On the 23rd of June 1917, she's interrogated again. Up to now, Mata Hari has denied working for the Germans in any way. But today, she will change her story. Today I'm going to tell you the whole truth. This is how she begins. Up to now, I've been too ashamed. She talks about The Hague, where she lives in 1915 after having to leave Berlin in a great hurry. And it's in The Hague that she meets the German Karl Hubert Kremer.
Kremer, who was the German consul in Amsterdam, was in fact the head of the German secret services in Amsterdam. Kremer was no fool and knew who Mata Hari was. He observed her and saw that she was bored to death and knew quite well that she was an important Parisian celebrity.
Mata Hari very much wants to return to Paris. The The German offers her 20,000 francs if she works as a German spy in France. She can always use money, as Mata Hari explains during interrogation. Her codename is H21.
By the time she meets Kramer, who was the German consul in The Hague, I think that this is probably when the notion of her operating as a spy first presents itself. And I think that, you know, various things go on in her head and she thinks, oh, I could do that. I really could do that.
When questioned, she admits to having received further payments from the Germans. And yes, she really was H21. This is the end for Mata Hari.
I think when she says, today I'm going to tell you the truth, and tells them about the money that she received from Kramer, I think that is her absolute undoing, because that was the evidence that they needed to say, look, here we've caught this spy red-handed, and she's actually confessed to spying for the Germans. And in fact, in terms of French law, I think that's all they needed.
Mata Hari feels she was owed the money. After all, when war broke out, she was obliged to leave her jewelry and furs in Berlin. In the German military archives, there's a report compiled by a senior German counterintelligence officer in the 1930s. It mentions Mata Hari, H21, and the writer of the report describes H21 as the most intelligent woman he has ever encountered. The report describes how Mata Hari was sent to Cologne and later Frankfurt in the late autumn of that year. In these cities, she was taught the craft of espionage by German counterintelligence.
A study of her schedule, which has a gap for this period, would enable one to think so. Mata Hari did speak of this, but at another time. There is a permanent struggle between the truth, the probable, and falsehood.
Major Gem's report was compiled long after Mata Hari's trial, and as evidence, it's certainly questionable.
There is no evidence at all proving that she had any spy training. It could have been that there was evidence, but again, during the wars, it could have been destroyed, or they destroyed it themselves. You don't know.
But whether she underwent training or not, one thing is clear.
To do justice once and for all to everything that has been said and written about Mata Hari, none of the information delivered was of any value to anyone, neither the French nor the Germans.
But Mata Hari made it easy for her accusers.
Not only was she involved with Germany, she was also involved with French counterintelligence and also suspected by the English. Normally, in a war situation, you would try to don't interact with any of the major players, keep out of it all, keep a low profile, and don't get in any trouble. And she was in trouble with not one, not two, but three major players in this conflict. And that is, well, you're asking for trouble, let's put it that way.
She was the worst spy in the world and wound up being the symbol for the best spy. But Mata Hari was a catastrophe as a spy.
Her trial begins on the 24th of July 1917. It lasts only 2 days. The death sentence is unanimous.
The story goes that on the day of the execution, she was brought out, stood in front of the firing squad, and she refused to be blindfolded. And she met her death head on.
That was on the 15th of October 1917. The war continues for more than 1 year. Nobody wants Mata Hari's body, but her life immediately becomes the material for a whole range of myths.
Remember, her trial was held in camera, so there was a kind of vacuum of information about what she'd actually done. There wasn't a lot of press coverage. The press weren't allowed to the execution. There was only a few reports that came out, and there was no grave. So there were these rumors that spread around Paris that she'd appeared in front of the firing squad in a fur coat, and she flung it open, and her body was so beautiful that the men misfired. There was another report that one of her Spanish lovers appeared from the woods on a horse and swept her up and took her away.
The exotic temptress Mata Hari is a victim of men, of international politics, but above all, of her own personal hubris. And yet, it is this sad end that makes her unforgettable.
Mata Hari was lucky, twice lucky in fact. Firstly, she was lucky to die while still young and beautiful. If she had died a wrinkled 60, I fear she would have been forgotten. Secondly, she was lucky to become a universal myth, which means that her guilt may be debated forever.
Later, films and books will embellish the life story of Mata Hari, and the most beautiful actresses will play her. In this way too, the myths overshadow the real person of Margaretha Geertruida.
She fulfilled what she always dreamed of, becoming one of the greatest stars. This dreadful story transformed her into what she always dreamt of being.